Prime Minister Narendra Modi to interact with the beneficiaries of PMSVANidhi Scheme hailing from Uttar Pradesh. PM will also inaugurate the National Anti-Corruption Conference Satark Bharat Samriddh Bharat via video link later in the day. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper to hold third 2+2 dialogue with their Indian counterparts. Dialogue to see signing of last foundational agreement, BECA. Visiting leaders will also call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Curtains come down on campaigning for the 71 seats in the first phase for the Bihar Assembly elections. Polling will be held tomorrow on these seats in 16 districts. Election Commission makes elaborate arrangements for free, fair and safe election during COVID times. BJP releases its list of candidates for the Rajya Sabha polls for Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri and BJP General Secretary Arun Singh, key candidates from the BJP. Today is the last day to file nominations for the Rajya Sabha polls. In international news, US presidential election candidates on a campaigning blitz as the D-Day comes closer. Running mates swoop down on battleground states to drum up crucial support. Early voting breaks record as more than 60 million Americans already cast their ballots. Meanwhile, Judge Coney Barrett takes oath as the US Supreme Court judge. And in cricket, selection committee of BCCI selects the Indian cricket team for the upcoming tour of Australia. KL Rahul takes vice captaincy as Rohit Sharma is dropped due to injury. Mohammad Siraz and Varun Chakravarti will be the new faces for the series. Hello and good morning to this broadcast. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Let's begin with our top story. Major defense partners India and United States are set to hold the third 2+2 dialogue today, which will see defense and external affairs ministers of India hold talks with the American counterparts in the national capital. Now, at the end of the discussion, the two countries are set to sign the BECA Pact, which will enable the two countries to share geospatial information in real time. Now, practically, it means that the two countries will share information they have through satellite and other sources about any place in real time. BECA is the fourth and the last strategic agreement in the series of pacts that are mandatory for the US for forging defense and strategic ties with any country. With this, India and United States will be one of the closest strategic allies. More in this report.
Monday saw the arrival of US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper in the national capital for a two-day visit to take part in the third 2+2 dialogue with their Indian counterparts. India is hosting the talks in New Delhi on Tuesday. The US Defense Secretary inspected a guard of honor in the South Block lawns on Raisina Hill upon reaching New Delhi, where he was also greeted by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. After the Guard of Honor, the two leaders also held a bilateral meeting, after which the Defense Minister said, India is delighted to host the US Secretary of Defense Dr. Mark Esper. Our talks today were fruitful, aimed at further deepening defense cooperation in a wide range of areas. Today's discussions will add new vigor to India-US defense relations and mutual cooperation. An official statement issued after the Rajnath Singh-Mark Esper meeting also made a major announcement. The signing of the last major strategic agreement between India and the US, known as the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation, or Beca, it will give India access to extremely accurate geospatial data that will have several military applications, including targeting enemy military assets. The day also saw the US Secretary of State meeting External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. The two US ministers will also call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi during their India visit, apart from holding a meeting with the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Pompeo is also slated to meet several other Indian leaders in politics and industry to further strengthen Indo-US ties. Ahead of the 2+2 dialogue to be held on Tuesday, the MEA had said. The first two 2+2 ministerial dialogues were held in New Delhi in September 2018 and in Washington, D.C. in 2019. The agenda for the third dialogue will cover all bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. A statement from the US State Department said, "The United States and India have a strong and growing bilateral relationship built on shared values and a commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Holding the third US-India 2+2 ministerial dialogue in just over 2 years demonstrates high-level commitment to our shared diplomatic and security objectives." After visiting India, Pompeo will also make stops in 2 Indian Ocean countries, Sri Lanka and Maldives, as part of the US policy to counter China's rising military and economic power. Both countries are under pressure due to massive Chinese loans for completing key infrastructure projects. Less than 10 days ahead of the US presidential elections, the US Secretary of State will also touch down in Indonesia, which has a territorial dispute with China in the South China Sea. Kadidi, India.
And the visiting U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper visited the National War Memorial a short while back and paid tributes to the martyrs. U.S. Secretary of State and Defense Secretary are in India to participate in the third India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue. And after holding the important 2+2 dialogue with their Indian counterparts, the visiting U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper will call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his official residence. Prime Minister Modi will be briefed by the 2 visiting dignitaries about the U.S. government's views about the future course of bilateral relations after signing of the historic BECA Pact. Now, this high-level bilateral engagement and signing of such a crucial pact so close to the U.S. election signifies the continuity in the India-US relations. And now let's get you news from poll-bound Bihar. All right, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the National Conference on Vigilance and Anti Corruption on the theme Satark Bharat, Samriddh Bharat, or Vigilant India, Prosperous India today via video conferencing. Now, the inaugural session of the conference will be live streamed. The Central Bureau of Investigation organizes this national conference coinciding with Vigilance Awareness Week, which is observed in India every year from the 27th of October to the 2nd of November. Activities in this conference would be focused on vigilance issues aimed at raising awareness and reaffirming India's commitment to promotion of integrity and probity in public life through citizen participation. The 3-day conference would discuss the challenges in investigation in foreign jurisdictions, preventive vigilance as a systemic check against corruption, systemic improvements for financial inclusion and prevention of bank frauds, effective audit as an engine of growth, among others. Now, the conference shall bring policymakers and practitioners on a common platform and will act as an enabler to combat corruption through systemic improvements and prevention vigilance measures, thereby ushering in good governance and accountable administration. And the Prime Minister will also interact with the beneficiaries of the PMSVANidhi Scheme from Uttar Pradesh today via video conferencing. Remember, the PM Street Vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi, or the Pradhan Mantri Swanidhi Scheme, was launched on the 1st of June this year to help street poor vendors impacted by COVID-19 resume livelihood activities. Till date, a total of more than 24 lakh applications have been received under the scheme, out of which more than 12 lakh have been sanctioned and about 5.35 lakh loans have been disbursed. In the state of Uttar Pradesh, more than 6 lakh applications have been filed, out of which about 3.27 lakh have been sanctioned and 1.87 lakh loans have been disbursed. The interaction will be witnessed by beneficiaries of the scheme from across the state of Uttar Pradesh. It will also be telecast live on DD News. Now let's get you news from poll-bound Bihar. Remember, the state is all set to witness the first phase of assembly elections tomorrow. 71 constituencies spread over 16 districts will go to polls in the first phase on Wednesday. In the first phase, out of 71 seats, the Magad region has 53 seats, while Anga has 18 seats. In the last assembly elections in 2015, remember, the Rashtriya Janata Dal had the highest number of 27 seats, while JDU had 18, BJP had 13 and the Congress had 9 seats. Out of the 53 seats in Magad, RJD had 22 seats, while JDU had 11 seats, BJP had 10 seats and the Congress was at 6 seats, while 1 seat each was held by the CPIML, HAM, RLSP and the Independents. On the other hand, out of the 18 seats in Anga region, JDU had the most, 7 seats, followed by 5 seats of RJD and 3 each with the Congress and BJP. Now, a total of 2.14 crore voters, including 1.1 crore women voters, will decide the fate of a total of 1,066 candidates. Out of these candidates, 114 are women candidates. The largest number of 27 candidates are in fray for the Gaya City Assembly seat, while the lowest 5 candidates are present in the Katoria Assembly seat. Several constituencies in the first phase, remember, are Naxal violence affected and sensitive from the security point of view, and therefore the Election Commission has made elaborate arrangements for free and fair polling. Let's now take a look at the key candidates trying their luck in this phase. Shailesh Kumar of the Janata Dal United is up against Ajay Kumar Singh of the Congress from Jamalpur Legislative Assembly. And JDU's Krishna Nandan Prasad Verma is contesting against RJD's Kumar Krishna Mohan from Jahanabad. In Rajpur Assembly constituency, JDU's Santosh Kumar Nirala is up against Congress's Vishwanath Ram. BJP's Prem Kumar and Congress's Onkar Nath are in close contest from Gaya town. And meanwhile, Ram Narayan Mandal of BJP is up against RJD's Javed Iqbal in Banka. BJP's Vijay Kumar Sinha and Congress's Amresh Kumar are also in close contest for the Lakhisarai Assembly constituency. While in Jamui, BJP's Shreyasi Yadav is up against RJD's Vijay Prakash Yadav. Now, former Chief Minister Jitan Ram Manjhi is contesting from Imamganj constituency against RJD's Uday Narayan Chaudhary, while in Shahpur, Rahul Tiwari of RJD is fighting against BJP's Munni Devi. Moving on to Ramgarh, RJD's Sudhakar Singh is up against BJP's Ashok Singh, while Anant Singh of RJD and JDU's Rajiv Lochan are fighting for the Mokama Assembly constituency. Now, in more poll-related news, today is the last day to file nominations for the Rajya Sabha polls. Earlier, Bharatiya Janata Party on Monday announced its candidates from Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand for the Rajya Sabha elections. Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri is one of the 8 candidates in the party's list for election to the upper house from Uttar Pradesh. BJP General Secretary Neeraj Shekhar too found his name on the list. The other 6 candidates in the fray from BJP for Rajya Sabha are Arun Singh, Haridwar Dubey, Brijlal, Geeta Shankya, BL Verma and Seema Dwivedi. The party has fielded Naresh Bansal for the lone seat from Uttarakhand. Moving on, Road Transport and Highways Minister Nitin Gadkari will today lay the foundation stone of 9 national highway projects in Tripura. The total length of these highways will be 262 kilometers, which will provide faster and hassle-free interstate and international connectivity to Bangladesh. These highways will strengthen the tourism sector in the state by providing better connectivity, fast and safe movement of traffic to various tourist, historical and religious places. It will also generate a large number of employment opportunities and provide self-employment opportunities to the unskilled, semi-skilled and skilled manpower of the region. And now an update on the COVID-19 status from across the country. India has achieved a significant milestone in its fight against COVID as the national recovery rate has reached 90.62%. 63,842 patients recovered in the last 24 hours. With this, the total number of recovered patients reached at 72,01,070. The active caseload of the country also keeps decreasing and stands presently below 8%. The total positive cases in the country, meanwhile, stand at 6,25,857, which comprises merely 7.88% of the total reported cases. Now, with a large number of COVID patients recovering every day, along with a steadily falling and sustained low mortality rate, India's trend of registering decreasing active cases continues. The Health Ministry in a tweet said, and I quote, "On a steady decline, India's fatality rate has reached 1.5%. The aim is to achieve case fatality rate of less than 1% and sustain it. 14 states and UTs are demonstrating case fatality rate less than 1% even today," unquote. In other news, as India continues to fight its battle with COVID-19, testing has also ramped up. According to the Indian Council of Medical Research, 9,58,116 samples were tested on the 26th of October. With this, the total 10,44,20,894 samples have been tested so far across the country. Moving on now, this is an important news with global impact. India has reiterated that it's unwavering in its commitment to the Palestinian cause and continues to remain supportive of a peaceful negotiated resolution of the Palestinian issue. India has supported the two-state solution as a just and acceptable solution to the conflict. Establishment of a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel within mutually agreed borders should be achieved through negotiations directly by the two parties. Now, the statement was made by India's permanent representative to United Nations, T.S. Tirumurthy, at an open debate on the Middle East situation at the UN Security Council. The statement further said that India supports Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's call for an international conference organized by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to engage all concerned parties in a meaningful peace process. And for more perspective on this, I'm joined on the phone line by my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran. Good morning, Ramesh. An important, statement coming from India. It's in its unwavering support to the Palestinian cause. How, help us get us the perspective of India vis-a-vis this issue.
Indeed, as you mentioned there, Ambassador Tirumurthy laid out India's position on a number of issues facing the Middle East, or West Asia as we call it, in his written statement to the UNSC on Monday. Besides Israel-Palestinian issue, he also spoke about Syria, Lebanon, Yemen. So one gets a comprehensive idea of where India sees itself in the situation obtaining in the Middle East. You referred to the Palestinian issue. He also spoke about Lebanon. For instance, he said that India has stood in solidarity with Lebanon after the 4th August blast that hit Beirut, and India has since then sent emergency humanitarian aid worth 58 metric tons to Beirut. He also spoke about the situation in Syria, for instance. Now, just for the benefit of our viewers, Syria today, after 9 odd years of civil war, has left 400,000 people dead, 6.2 million people displaced internally, another 6.3 million people living as refugees outside Syria. So this is a humanitarian situation, a crisis of mammoth proportions, and India says it is in favor of a peaceful resolution of the Syrian crisis as well through a Syrian-led dialogue. So India laid out its position on a number of issues, including Yemen, and as you mentioned, Israel-Palestinian issue as well.
Ramesh, I'd also like you to talk a little about, India's outreach to West Asian countries. Over the years, we've seen, especially with the Modi government coming in, that the outreach towards West Asia has been immense. We have seen Prime Minister Modi travel to several countries in West Asia and, forge strong ties with them. How do you see this, especially in the context of the new global order?
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is one Indian leader who has invested a great deal of time, energy and effort into ramping up ties with West Asia. Now, the underlying philosophy of his actions in West Asia lies in what he calls the Act West policy, or the Link West policy. By that he means India needs to step up ties with countries in the region, in the Gulf and in the wider Arab world. And we saw Prime Minister Modi travel to virtually every country of consequence in that region, including Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Israel and Palestinian territories as well. So we had a comprehensive view of India's approach to the neighborhood, what India calls extended neighborhood. And by the way, Prime Minister Modi has received the highest civilian awards of many countries in the region, including Saudi Arabia. So
Yes.
that speaks to the effort India has put into wrapping up ties with countries in that part of the world.
All right, Ramesh, thanks very much for joining us with those inputs and helping us understand the latest statement that India has given at United Nations, which is that of its unwavering support and commitment to the Palestinian cause. Now, moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump and his challenger, the Democrats' nominee Joe Biden, continue to make their pitch to voters in key swing states with about a week to go until Election Day. The Trump campaign is trying desperately to wake up ground, with Biden currently leading in the polls. Our U.S. correspondent Spitzer has more from San Francisco.
Both President Trump and his challenger, the former Vice President Joe Biden, held competing campaign events in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, that is a swing state, a state which President Trump narrowly won in 2016, and also the state where Joe Biden grew up. So it is a state that is seen as somewhat of a bellwether for how this election might turn out. And if we look at the opinion polls as they stand right now, Joe Biden is leading comfortably. Now, I don't think anyone in his campaign or his supporters is really taking anything for granted, especially given what we saw in 2016 when everyone really expected Hillary Clinton to win, and that did not work out well at all for her. But Biden's lead in the polls is somewhat stronger than Clinton's right now. So we're seeing Trump really having to go on the offensive, and his schedule appears to be more packed than Biden's for this final week of campaigning.
And the early voting in the United States has broken the earlier records, crossing 60 million votes till now. Let's listen in to Spritzer for more on its implications.
Now, one thing that is really different with this election compared to previous elections is a tremendous number of Americans have already cast their ballots, largely because of the pandemic and the fear of going to vote in person. According to a recent estimate, over 60 million Americans have already voted. That's more than the entire early voting total from the last election, and we still have about a week to go. So these candidates, while they're still trying to drive their messages home, especially, of course, to the swing voters in swing states, which always ultimately decide the election, while they're doing that, many Americans have already made their decisions. So perhaps an uphill battle for President Trump, given the opinion polls. But again, really, I don't think any certainty for anyone here about how this final week is going to go. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
A nominee of U.S. President Donald Trump, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, has taken oath to the Supreme Court. Earlier, her appointment was confirmed by the Senate. It is being seen as a significant victory for President Donald Trump a week before the general election. Now, Trump's fellow Republicans voted 50-48 to approve the judge, overcoming the unified opposition of Democrats. The 48-year-old's appointment seals for the foreseeable future a 6-3 conservative majority on the top U.S. judicial body.
I, Amy Coney Barrett, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution.
Moving on, let's now take a look at the updates of COVID-19 pandemic from across the world. As of now, more than 4,37 lakh coronavirus cases have been reported worldwide, with over 11,64,000 deaths. Over 3,21 lakh people have recovered from the virus. United States continues to top the list among the worst hit countries by the pandemic, with the highest number of infections. U.S. has over 89,62,000 cases of coronavirus, with the death toll surging past 2,31,000. Meanwhile, Spain's intensive care wards would reach a critical situation by mid-November as the country emerges as one of Europe's worst COVID-19 hotspot. The country's total number of cases soared by more than 50,000 over the weekend to reach 1,156,498 as of Monday, while the death toll is 35,031. Now, the Spanish government faced a backlash over its plans to the country under a 6-month state of emergency. Spanish government is facing criticism by opposition parties who say 6 months was too long, while some citizens balked at the nightly curfews. Spain entered the second state of emergency on Sunday, enabling a nighttime quarantine to be enforced across the whole country except the Canary Islands. Moving on, in a significant discovery, NASA has said that its mission SOFIA has confirmed the presence of water molecules in the Clavius crater, one of the largest craters visible from Earth on the lunar surface. This crater is located in the moon's southern hemisphere. The latest discovery is on the sun-lit side of the moon. NASA has said that this discovery indicates that water may be distributed across the surface and not limited to cold, shadowed places. Describing the discovery as exciting, several NASA scientists are even hopeful of Moon serving as a space station and other human activity in future if more water is discovered on the lunar surface. And let's get you sports updates now. BCCI has announced the Indian squads for all the 3 formats for the upcoming Australia tour, scheduled to begin from the 27th of November. Virat Kohli will be leading the team in all 3 formats, while ace batsman Rohit Sharma, pacer Ishant Sharma and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar have been left out due to injuries. KL Rahul has been included in all the 3 formats, while Rishabh Pant has been retained as a wicket-keeper in the Test squads, while KL Rahul will be keeping wickets in ODIs and T20. Spinner Varun Chakravarti, who has been included in the T20 squad, and pacer Mohammad Siraj in the Test squad will be making their debuts for Team India. Well, with that, it's a wrap in this broadcast, but news and updates continue on the other side as well. Thanks for joining us right now. Namaskar.